Welcome to the Sandy and Toddcast, a podcast about all things strange, unusual, and a little bit odd. Why? Because that's how we roll. What are we talking about this time? Check it out. Another lovely episode of the Sandy and Toddcast. Welcome, Toddcast.
Hello, Sandy.
Last week was really fun. I didn't realize we talked as much as we did. It kind of went fast.
Well, I did some math, so I listened back to it, and I kept track. I had a little counter. When you talk, I'd start the counter. When you'd stop talking, it would stop. And then when I started, what I realized was there was all this talking going on one side. No, I'm just kidding.
I was wondering where you were going with that, and I quickly found out.
When we get together, we just discuss. So when we do this, it's just like us having a conversation.
We do. And it's funny because I wasn't planning on us doing this particular episode that we're going to do today, actually this week. But then something really strange happened to us this week that we're going to kind of segue from the beginning of this episode into the second half of the episode and discuss that. Something totally unexpected that actually is turning out as a good thing. It's very good, but it kind of reminded me of the Amityville Horror case as we were going along. And figuring it out. So I thought, why not talk about the Amityville Horror this week? It's something that everybody knows. We all grew up with it. I don't think there's anybody who doesn't know what the Amityville Horror was.
In this day and age, I'm sure there are. However, I think there's fewer people who are unaware of it at this point, just because of all the national attention it got, just because of all the Hollywood attention it got. And I think because of there's more paranormal investigative information out there now. And so there's a lot of reference to it. So people who weren't around when this stuff kind of came out in the mid to late 70s, at least have seen references of it in several movies over the years.
And I think also that whether you believe that it actually happened or you believed it was a big hoax, that any kind of discussion about it is going to elicit more talk about it, is going to make more people aware of it. And I do think, regardless of whether you believe it's true or not, I think it's very important to the evolution of paranormal research. And I mean, Ed and Lorraine Warren were involved in it. Hans Holzer was involved in it at one point. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. But some of the big names in paranormal research over the years were actually involved in this case. This was huge. So whether you believe it was true or not, it really helped in the evolution of paranormal research.
Right. And for me, I mean, it really was the door that opened, and I mentioned this in the last podcast. This was the event, this was the book, this was the movie that really started my awakening to finally believing that some of this stuff could be true, that some of this stuff does go on, and that what we see, hear, feel, touch, smell on a daily basis isn't necessarily all that's going on out there. And as you're growing up and you hear bumps in the night and you're thinking of the monsters under your bed or in your closet, or you watch a spooky movie with the family and you go to bed and you don't sleep for days, and your parents say, "Oh, there's no such thing as a boogeyman." You know, the truth of the matter is, there probably is something, and everybody's boogeyman is a little different. But for me, it was kind of the door that opened my eyes to a lot of new stuff.
Well, it's terrifying. It's terrifying. As a kid, it was terrifying to me to think that there was a pig named Jody in somebody's bedroom, that there were red eyes staring, into someone's bedroom from outside. And what really fascinated me even more, I think, was the whole DeFeo thing, because that kicked it all off, or seemed to kick it all off. It's not just the Lutz family. Something weird went on with the DeFeo family, too.
And quite possibly even before that. They may have been actually, that whole incident there where the family was murdered by one member of the DeFeo family, that may have happened because of stuff that happened many years before that. Who knows? Hundreds of years? You never know.
Honestly, that's my thought. Let's start out. I'm just going to give a little bit of background for anybody who needs a little bit more details on what happened. We'll start with the DeFeos. The DeFeo family consisted of Ronald DeFeo Sr., he was 44 years old, Louise DeFeo, his wife, she was 42, Ronnie Jr. was 23, they called him Butch. His sister Dawn was 18, Allison was 13, Mark 12, and John Matthew 9. Big family, lots of kids. They lived in this Long Island, Amityville, Long Island home right on the water. It's 112 Ocean Avenue, and we know that now it's not the same number. The number's been changed. Well, around 6:30 on Wednesday, November 13th, 1974, Ronnie Jr. entered a bar and he asked for help because he thought that his family had been shot. All of the victims had been shot with a .35 caliber Marlin around 3 a.m. that morning. The DeFeo parents had both been shot twice. The children had all been killed with single shots. Now, it didn't really take the police long to start suspecting Ronnie, who was the only one who was still alive. He said it was probably a mafia hit at first because his father did some dealing with the mob, but the next day he actually confessed. He told them, quote, "Once I started, I just couldn't stop. It went so fast." At his trial, his defense was insanity, and he claimed that it was self-defense because he heard their voices actually plotting against him. On November 21st, 1975, he was found guilty on 6 counts of second-degree murder and given 6 25 years to life sentences. He's still alive. He's still in jail. He's still telling a million different stories. Every single time somebody talks to him, the story changes. Right. A lot of controversies, obviously, surrounding this. One big thing is that the rifle was just shot. There was no silencer mechanism on it. And that's really interesting because how could he have shot the first 1 or 2 people, his parents, without the rest of them being woke up? They were all laying in their beds sleeping. There was no evidence of any kind of a struggle. They were just all sleeping in their beds. And none of the neighbors actually heard any of the gunshots, just the family's dog barking at the time. There were no signs of drugs in any of the victims because some people thought, well, maybe he drugged them. Absolutely no signs of drugs. There's no clear motive to this day. Ronnie has given several different versions of the murder, including one where he said his sister Dawn actually killed her father. Then their distraught mother killed the rest of the siblings, and that's when he says he killed his mother. The rest of the versions were just as crazy. There's several of them. I've watched a lot of his interviews over the years because he fascinates me, and yes, he's definitely crazy. But there are a lot of people who really believe that there was something there that influenced him in that house to murder his entire family. There was a lot going on there. You know, there was a lot of physical violence in that family.
Right. Not unlike a lot of families back at that time, I think, to be honest with you. I think that, you know, hitting the kids and all that kind of stuff, Dad was probably a little bit more over the top than he needed to be. And then, you know, that you talk about he was a little crazy. Then you wonder where that craziness came from. You know, did it come from just a psychological thing going on? Was it because of the family? Was there some sort of other energy there that created him or made him to become kind of nuts? One of the best websites that I have found on Amityville is actually AmityvilleMurders.com. And if you go there, it's got the story. It's got the pictures of the family, stories about what happened after the shootings, and then actual pictures from the night when the cops got there. All of the scene. So you see the beds with the blood in it, and you see, you know, the socks still laying on the floor in the bedrooms and all that kind of stuff. So if you want to see it and kind of get a feel for what it was like at that particular moment, I think one of the pictures, I got to double check this. I got to look at it right now. But one of the pictures, it still has the body laying in there.
That's just so disturbing.
Yeah, but if you want to check it out and kind of get a feel for what happened that night, yeah, you should check it out. AmityvilleMurders.com.
I'm so awful. I love that stuff. I hate to admit it and say it like that, but I just heard a story about the two hikers who disappeared in Panama in like 2013. And the first thing I had to do was go and search it and look for the pictures. And they found a foot in a shoe, and I had to look at that. I think it's, if you're investigative at all, if you're curious at all, those are great ways, and you can handle it. Those are great ways to really get a feel for what actually happened.
Listen, the real crime here was the decor in the house. I'm just going to tell you right now. Some of that wallpaper, I love that time period, but holy shit.
The wood paneling and the linoleum floors and the shag carpet. And how about the sofas with the deer scene on it? The velvet.
Gorgeous.
Oh, yes.
I mean, it screams 70s. If you want to see a house that screams 70s before there were screams of murder, check out the Amityville
And that was
house.
a big deal back then. These people had a little bit of money. You know, they're
did.
living in Amityville on Long Island.
Right, in a large house. It was a colonial house, so it was not small. It had a full third floor, and that's where apparently Ronnie had his bedroom and blah, 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 blah. But yeah, I mean, they did have a lot of money. They had a lot of nice things. So then, like, your question again, what happened there? What happened with Ronnie that this took place? Why didn't the other family members hear it while these shots were going off? Yes, it was a large house, but I mean, you would think a gunshot would ring out pretty loudly. And the neighbors, because of the situation of the house, okay, when the house was built, it was not built like a normal colonial wood with the wide section facing the road. It was actually built the other way with the shorter edge so that less land would have to be purchased in order to place it there. So you could buy a smaller lot, save a little bit of money, put more money into the house. So literally the driveway for this house and the driveway for the house right next to it butted up next to one another. They were almost one driveway. That's how close these houses were kind of wedged in together. How did somebody in the next house not hear it?
I can hear where I live. I have houses very close to me on the side. We have a beautiful backyard, but we're very close on the side. Your
Right.
typical, suburban home. And I can hear when they take their garbage out. I can hear when their TV's too, you can hear these things. How can you be that close to somebody and not hear anything? There are a lot of ideas that float around. I think that the fact that they did toxicologies and found no drugs, no alcohol,
Very
nothing
interesting. Yep.
is very, very interesting. I'm one of those people that's very, as immersed in the paranormal as I am, I tend to be on the skeptical side. I tend to feel as if we need to eliminate everything else before we actually start to think, hey, there could be something paranormal going on here.
Yeah.
I do that with everything that happens, everything we experience. That's my first inclination. But when you're taking away all of these different possible variables, sometimes you do have to just look at something like a paranormal event. Now, we're talking about, and I think I told you this before, we're talking about land in New York State. New York State, one of the most history-rich regions of the United States of America. And you're talking about bloodshed upon bloodshed. The Indians, you're talking about wars, you're talking about death, you're talking about Indians living on this land that, were essentially, they lived by a different way of life than we did. They had different rituals and different customs, and there was negativity, and they had shaman. There is energy in the land itself. I had somebody come to me a couple months ago and tell me she thought that her home was haunted, and she is right on one of the most historical plots of land in our county. And I said, it may not even be the house itself. It could be the land holding that energy, that negative energy. Don't forget Albert Einstein, energy cannot be created nor destroyed. Where is that energy being held? Everything
Right.
creates energy, so, which will tie into what we're talking about later. But, there is possibility that land is holding such negative energy. It's just waiting to come out.
Well, and here's the other thing, and this kind of leads more into something that we've been involved with here in the last couple of days. But, other families have moved in to this home, after the Lutzes, after the DeFeos, and have had nothing go on. And they basically say everything's bullshit, everything's hogwash. There's nothing bad about this house. And then the question becomes, okay, it's not the house. Maybe it's the land. Maybe there's something that we don't know about Ronnie, about maybe some abilities that he may or may not have had to be open to energies and all that kind of stuff. And so maybe it came to him from the area. I mean, we don't know. Some things happened. Some of it seems to be historically recorded and some of it not. So the question lies, where do you start looking? And again, that lends to something that you and I have kind of gone through the last couple of days, where we were in the same situation where something was reported, seemed a little crazy. Was it the house? Maybe, maybe not. Is this person nuts? Or maybe she's just very sensitive. I don't know. But yeah, it really you start thinking back not only on the Amityville case, but other cases like it. Like, was the house haunted? Was it something else? Was it somebody in the house not physically doing something, but their energy being a part of it? I mean, it opens up a whole new realm of questions. And
I think it does an extreme disservice to the people involved to immediately dismiss it and say that there was nothing there. Because
Exactly.
I don't feel as if there was nothing there. Just because you don't experience something does not mean that there's not something there. You and I know we're open, so we know when there's energy. Not everybody can feel that. Not everybody can feel it on the same level. So where we might be disturbed by something, somebody else may say, oh, there's nothing going on. How did we grow up? Thinking we were crazy because people around us couldn't feel the same things that we felt. So what was our first inclination? Well, I must be crazy. I must be depressed. Right.
Yep.
So, we don't know, and we can talk about our theories on it at the end of this, but, we don't know what actually happened. We'll never know what actually really happened. There's no way of knowing. But when you have two families who are experiencing extreme distress and trauma in the same location, there's something going on there. It can't be just ignored. I hate when people say, it was just a bunch of bullshit. It was a hoax. It was a big hoax. I don't believe it was a big hoax. Chris Quarantino, I'll talk about the Lutz family in just a second, but Chris Quarantino, who is Kathy Lutz's son, one of her sons, and he put out a book, and he talks about how, his experiences, and how can you not believe somebody who truly, when you listen to him, he to this day is traumatized by what he went through as a child. You don't put on a major hoax, be a part of it as a child, and 40 years later still act traumatized by what you've been through.
And not just from the paranormal realm. There was abuse and stuff going on in the family, which may or may not have helped fuel all the other stuff going on.
Yes. It's all... Okay, but let me talk about the Lutz family real quick so we can fill everybody. Let's talk about the Lutzes.
And now the Lutz family.
So the Lutz family bought this house in December of 1975. George and Kathy Lutz. They got it for what they considered to be a bargain price at the time, $80,000, which in essence, it was an extremely reasonable price. The property not only had the large house, but it had a pool and a boathouse, and it was on the canal. On Long Island, at that time, $80,000 was just unheard of.
And that price basically was based on not the fact that the house was in disrepair or anything like that. It was based on the fact that there was a huge, very televised, very, very well-known murder in the house.
Exactly. Multiple killings in the same house. So right. The couple had just gotten married. They were really excited. They thought, oh, this is our dream house.
First problem right there.
They didn't know what they were in for after that. It was all downhill from there, right? But they had their dog Harry with them, and Kathy had the 3 kids from her previous marriage, Danny, who was 9, Christopher Quarantino, who was 7, and Missy, who was 5. And what's really weird about this, like as if it's not weird enough, Todd, one really weird thing that I didn't know about until recently, I don't know why I never knew this, when they bought the house, they paid an extra $400 to get all of the DeFeo's furniture with it.
See, yeah, well, that's the other part of it, and I was going to mention that. I mean, when I was making fun of the interior and stuff like that, it wasn't necessarily the Lutzes who had the money. It was the fact that the family before them had acquired so many things and had, and so they kept all this stuff.
All of this stuff in the house from murdered people.
Now, first of all, okay, let's just say you take a step back and go, well, it's just stuff. It can't have energy, no bad luck. Okay, let's say you believe that. Would you want their stuff in your house?
No.
Like even like a bed that somebody was murdered in? I don't know. I might choose a couple of items, but even if you take the paranormal thoughts out of it and I, scared of I just don't think I'd want people's
It's
stuff.
creepy.
Even if there wasn't a freaking murder, I don't want Grandma Jones's, side table in my living room. I just don't.
Even my grandma, when she passed away, I have a few things of hers left over the years, but I had her bedroom set for a while and everything. But that was a little bit different because she was a family member. But
still,
why would I want? And I'm a believer that I love antiques. I love to antique shop, but I rely on my feelings when I go into a shop because if I feel weird about something as much as I love it, I will not buy it.
Yeah.
I am a believer that someone's energy can go with it, and I just don't feel comfortable with that idea. So all of that stuff was there. Everything can, what's the word I want? Everything can take in energy. We take in energy. Everything takes in energy. Why can't it be transferred? It's got to go somewhere. It can't be destroyed. Energy can't be destroyed, so it's got to go somewhere. It's got to be managed. It's got to be moved. It's got to be transferred somewhere. So why can't it go with belongings? I would never have done that. And they went into the house knowing full well what had happened. I just would not have done that. And especially when we found out that they weren't very religious to begin with. So, I guess I can understand. George was non-practicing Methodist. Kathy was a non-practicing Catholic, so there wasn't much religion or belief in their household to begin with.
Right.
So they may have gone in thinking, oh, this is a bargain, $400, we can get everything. I wouldn't be like that. That would not be.
What are you? Are you a non-practicing what?
I was born and raised Catholic, but consider myself more spiritual now. I still hold some of my Catholic beliefs. I'm not a fan of the church itself. I never have been. Except when I was 7 and my grandfather would take me to church every Sunday for years.
So I do have a question for you. And people need to know when we have this podcast, we don't agree on everything. So you may throw a red flag at me. I may throw a red flag at you. What's your point in bringing up the fact that they had no religion really in their family?
Well, I think that regardless of what your religion is, I think that belief in something can help you be stronger and more focused. Faith can be strong. If you have faith in something, a lot of things are about intent. So if you have faith in something, if your intentions are strong, I think it helps you in some ways.
And I don't want to get ahead of you, but I think that some of the intentions and some of the beliefs that George Lutz was involved with, according to his son, Chris, may have also helped create some of what was going on while they were there. I
agree. And George, go ahead. You know the story. Go ahead.
I
think that's a good place to start talking about that.
Well, apparently, according to Chris, the individual that you were, the son that you were talking about, who lived his life there as a child and kind of went through what was going on, a lot of people took aim at the family saying they were making this stuff up. And Chris has come forward and said, here's some of the stuff I went through. And his take on it, my understanding of his take on it, is that George, in his library and the books that he read and the things that he kind of held true, got into a lot of dark magic kind of stuff. And it's possible that George was actually practicing some of that within the house and actually brought some of that stuff into the house because of the things he was reading and the rituals he was doing and because of his energy in general. So, there's where I stay. Okay, so the DeFeo family had its tragedy. Maybe something was involved that came into that situation because somebody was open there, or maybe they were doing some, black magic or something like that. And then another family, other than the Lutzes, could have moved in. You and I could have bought the house together if I wasn't like 5 at the time. And we could have bought the house and nothing could have happened, even though we were sensitive and all that kind of stuff. We were young at the time. But you get the right combination of people to buy that house, the right energies, the right talents or gifts, and all of a sudden you've got a whirlwind of problems. And I kind of think that's maybe what happened with the Lutzes.
Ding, ding, ding. There's something we agree on.
Ding, ding, ding.
I said ding, ding, ding. You said ding, ding, ding to me the other day.
$10 pyramid. Here's your host.
We need a sound effect. But you did that to me the other day, so I figured I'd do it to you. But yes, I don't for a second believe that negativity wasn't involved in this. My thought is, and I'm big on energy, my thought is that in some way, not only did Ronnie DeFeo, I look at it as a perfect storm. Ronnie DeFeo may or may not have been open. I think possibly he was. And I'll tell you, part of it, I think, is because of the physical, emotional, and mental abuse going on in that family.
Yep.
And there are many, many stories that are actually documented of the abuse that went on in that household. The mafia actually was involved. I want to say that Ron Sr.'s sister was married to somebody in the mob. And so there was a lot. Ron Sr. himself owned a car dealership, which I feel like, just you and me, just between us, I feel like there was no way they could have, and everybody else, there was no way they could afford that home at the time. If there wasn't something, yes. If there wasn't something else going on there. God only knows what those kids were actually privy to. And I feel like it was the perfect storm in that situation. Ronnie was probably open, at least to some extent. You've got all of that abuse.
Under pressure from other family members outside the immediate family to do something.
Right.
Who knows?
And I think, my feelings, but my feelings are that if there was something extremely negative to begin with attached either to that house or that land, that somehow he invited that in. He invited that in because you can't explain away the fact that this man shot 10 times with a house less than 15 feet away and nothing but a dog barking. And not one person heard it. Not one person heard it in that entire neighborhood. We just Google Earthed it last week. We see how close those houses are. I really, truly feel like it was invited in. I think that when it came to Kathy and George and the kids, I really believe Chris Quarantino when he says that George was doing something. George was doing something. It invited it in. You and I could go to a home, and if we're not allowing ourselves, we've learned to put up walls. We've learned to block things because we have to. It's survival. But if we're not inviting it in, it's not going to be able to come in. In the Catholic Church, demonic possession is usually weak people who mentally, physically, emotionally are going through something that makes it easier for them to be preyed upon. You're somehow inviting it. You're allowing it in. I think that George did. I think that Ronnie Jr. did. That's why a lot of times in the next several years, people weren't having issues. They weren't in that same mindset. They weren't in that same type of world as those two families were in that allowed that negativity. The energy didn't go anywhere. I'll tell you right now, the energy is still there. But it can't feed on anybody because they're not allowing it to. There's not a perfect storm going on. Do I think in 10 years somebody could come in there that allows it and you'll have the same situation? I sure as hell do. I really feel.
Do you think the energy there, but do you think it's tied to the house or do you think it's tied to the area? Or what?
I've gotten a feeling with the land. But I'll tell you what. I feel like it's always been tied to the land. Mm-hmm. But when the DeFeo situation happened, it took over that home. It took over the home. Because now you've got trauma. Now you don't have trauma just on land, not in land. Now you've got trauma within a structure. It's going to be in there. I bet if you and I walked in there, we would have to sit down because it's still in there.
Well, yeah, especially if all that really bad furniture and paneling were in there.
We'd have to go in blindfolded.
Actually, I like that kind of stuff. So
I do too.
And I was reminded just now by looking at some of the pictures on this website. Do you remember the name for the house? Because the DeFeos built the house and they gave the house in that little plot a little name. Don't you look it up.
I'm not. I can't think of it, but I know what I remember hearing about it, but I don't know what it's called.
It's called High Hopes.
That's right. Yes. High Hopes.
Like somebody said, okay, we're going into 2021, and a lot of people go, this is my year. I'm going to do this, this, and this. And somebody on Twitter, I think, said, okay, nobody claimed 2021 is theirs. Let's walk in really slowly, take a look around, and just take a couple of breaths before we determine that this is going to be our year, because we don't know quite.
I'm not taking anything for granted.
High hopes. Right. You build a house and you call it High Hopes. You're screwed right there.
Yeah, you've done yourself in to begin with. But yeah, I seem to remember, because I've done a lot of research over the years on this, not recently, but I seem to remember that it isn't the only weird things that have happened in that area, though. Okay, so I think there were a few drownings that were kind of suspicious and weird. I seem to remember some stuff like that. I'll have to see. I'll put some stuff up if I can think of it. I seem to remember that there were a few incidents that happened in that neighborhood that were kind of weird.
Okay.
Not necessarily the house related, and we don't know what the neighbors have experienced. Nobody talks. Did you notice how nobody talks about anything ever? There's never been an interview with neighbors. There's never been an interview with anyone involved in that area at all. We don't know if they experience things. Yeah. My guess is that they are. Because it's not just that specific plot of land. The history is everywhere. So my thought is that they are probably experiencing things, but nobody wants to talk about it. And I can understand. You say one thing, and now the Amityville Horror case has been opened back up again, and you've got a million reporters all over your front lawn.
Well, of course, and the movie came out in the late 70s, and then there was another movie with Ryan Reynolds, which, by the way, this movie should never have been remade, and it was freaking horrible. So don't remake a movie like this, because it doesn't need to be made. But, so the movie came out in 70, this all kind of came out in the late 70s, and to this day, there are people who drive past just to stop and see the house. I'd be one of them, definitely.
I told you, road trip. What can you imagine if we go down there? What we would feel like? I can't even imagine what I would feel down there.
Well, here's what we would do: we'd park across the street. We're going to take a laptop and we'll do a podcast from across the street.
Oh my God!
And paint the picture for everybody and that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, I understand it, but literally, that's why people don't want to talk. I mean, because there's still people who check this out. There's people like me who go on Google Earth and have to find out where the house is and where it's situated.
No, but it's true. That's my whole point, is they probably aren't even experiencing anything remotely close to what happened in that house. Right. But my feeling about this situation is that they're all experiencing things. Sometimes, regardless of whether you're open to something or not. And I'm willing to bet that the people who live in that house have experienced things over the years, but they're not going to talk about it either. And it's probably nowhere near what happened with the two families. But I'm willing to bet that things have moved, or noises or sounds or voices have happened over the years. Maybe they play them down and ignore them and don't think of them. We know cases where things like that have happened. My gut feeling is that that's still going on today, just not anywhere near what it did.
Question for you, and you may not have an answer. And again, this is when we do these podcasts, we're not sitting here with piles of information and we've read up on everything. It's just our experience of going through what we know and what we've, dealt with. So Kathy Lutz, you said she was a non-practicing
Catholic.
Right. Okay. So she was Catholic, because I was going to say, why would she turn to the Catholic Church?
Right.
That seemed odd to me, but knowing that she was a non-practicing Catholic, then I understand why she would do that.
And there's always been something about George that didn't sit right with me. He was involved in a lot of paranormal conventions and podcasts over the years. And there's something about George that didn't sit right with me. Not necessarily that he was making this stuff up. He was he never took responsibility
for what he knew he did to make those events actually come to fruition.
That's it. Right there.
I've always felt like, okay, maybe some of this stuff that we have heard about has been exaggerated, but if something did happen there, that's my gut feeling on it. That's my feeling on it. But I think he's never said, okay, this stuff did happen.
Right. And that brings up a couple of points. Number one, I don't believe that, and most people accept this idea, not everything that was in the books or the movies actually happened. Kathy and George would even go on to say later on that it was, I mean, it's movies, it's entertainment,
right,
you know,
right.
they've got to make money. So some of it was exaggerated. Some of it was kind of thrown in there to make it, but the main ideas have always remained the same. There's never been too much variation on the main ideas and the main stories. I remember watching, you remember Phil Donahue.
How could you forget Phil Donahue?
I know. I loved him. I really did.
I still do.
I love Phil Donahue.
Who he's married to, right?
No. Oh, that girl.
Yeah, that girl is right.
Yes.
Yeah, Marlo Thomas.
Marlo
yes.
Thomas. Yes.
Yep.
I used to watch that show too.
Right.
We're so old. But I watched, he had the Lutzes on one of his shows once. And this followed them. A lot of people don't realize that this actually followed them after they moved. They moved to California. And I remember vividly Kathy saying that they came out of their apartment one day, and they had bicycles, and there were like snakes wrapped all around the bicycles. And they were in a place where you wouldn't normally see, they were poisonous snakes. Things like that would happen to them for quite a while after they moved. Like just things that wouldn't happen to a normal person, strange events would happen to them. So Kathy believed that, Kathy I think died in the mid-2000s from cancer, but they divorced in the late 90s, I think, but they stayed friendly with each other. But yeah, she would tell stories about how this thing actually followed them. They would still get negative things happen to them, strange things that wouldn't happen to anybody else, but they would get it for quite a while. So it's an interesting case. I don't necessarily, if you don't look at the movie and the book, it's a lot more intriguing for the paranormal world than, you know, if you take the entertainment out of it, which a lot of people don't. A lot of people want to go by what the movie and the book did.
Yeah, I doubt there was blood oozing out of the walls.
No.
I doubt that happened. One of the things that I always felt was really interesting about the book, and it should have been a foreshadowing of my interest in home construction and architecture in general, but one of the best parts of the book for me was actually seeing the blueprint of the house, and it showed you where all the rooms were in the home and all that. That was really interesting to me. So when I finally got to see the movie and what the supposed house looked like and stuff like that, that was always kind of interesting. But it was always interesting that the energy came from the third floor, you know?
Yeah, because that's where the kids saw Jody. That's where they saw the eyes looking in, the red eyes looking in at them. That seemed to be the focal point. Do you remember the picture? And I love and hate this picture at the same time. The picture that was taken, I think, on the second floor landing of the little boy looking.
That was with the Warrens, wasn't it, during one of their investigations?
That was because Lorraine said she told them to take a picture because she felt something. At the top, they asked her to go up the stairs and see what she felt. And she said, take a picture now. And that's the picture that I'm getting the chills as I talk about this, because that picture is pretty amazing from a lot of different aspects.
And there's a lot of people who refute it and say, well, it was the son of one of the investigators and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I don't care. In this realm, I don't care what you do. By the way, Winston's in my studio with me right now, and I think he wants to go out of the room because he's standing next to me by the here. But there's always going to be people that say it's bullshit. But yes, that picture itself is pretty creepy.
Yeah, it is. It's very creepy, and it's very well defined. But yet,
it looks like somebody standing there.
Yeah.
I mean, it literally.
But yet, it doesn't necessarily look like a, quote, real child is standing there. Like a solid, real child is standing there. It's pretty intriguing.
You know what that kind of reminds me of, again, that kind of ties into what we've been experiencing the last couple of days with the picture of what appears to be 3 or 4 individuals.
Yes.
And one of them being a young person, maybe in their teens.
I got 16. I got the age of 16.
And I've been told by somebody else maybe between 15 and 17. So guess what? 16's right there.
Yep.
Right?
So that would work.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the kind of stuff it reminds me of when you get some sort of evidence or you get something that shouldn't be there because it wasn't there in your eyesight, but you see it in a photograph or a video or whatever.
Well, speaking of, that kind of thing, we did experience something this week that we've never done before. And we did it together, which was really cool and really great. And we kind of joined forces. Wonder Twin powers activate.
I always thought it sucked that the boy of the twins, the girl could be any animal she wanted.
I know.
How
I
cool
love
is
that.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other guy could be freaking water.
I know. It's true. I loved
what a sucky thing to have.
Wait, Sheena, and what was his name?
Not Sheena, was it?
I thought it was Sheena. Are you looking
got
it
a
up?
Computer in front. Yeah, let's look it up. You want me to, or do you want to? I will.
All right.
So you can start telling the story while I look up the Wonder Twins.
All right. So this was what day? Tuesday or Wednesday? Tuesday.
I don't remember it.
I don't even know. So
Zan is the boy.
Zan.
And Jaina.
Okay.
And they had the monkey. I think the monkey's name was Gleek or something.
Yes, it was. It was something like that. And I always wanted to be the cheetah. I thought that was like so super cool.
Well, I mean, I certainly didn't want to be the guy.
You could be a bucket of ice.
Cubes. What the hell?
But in the end, they worked together and they solved the problem.
Yeah, I think she did most of the work, though. He could become a sheet of ice and then somebody slip on and fall on their ass or something,
What can I say?
Saved the day.
I became a bucket of ice cubes. So he was a glacier once, I think. This is the most ridiculous.
It's just the stupidest thing that you could be if you're a super person, a wonder person.
When you're making this up, why would you make somebody be a form of water?
I don't know.
Like, I get the animal part, but why wouldn't
even form of energy? Because then he could take fire, he could take air, he could take anything, right? Sound.
Right.
He could be sound waves and knock somebody over.
Exactly.
But water?
I don't understand. Now I'm going to have to go look it up like on YouTube and watch some of these episodes because it's just going to crack me up trying to remember some of the things that he was.
I think he was he was the black sheep of the family, very embarrassed by the superpowers
he was,
and very emasculating for him, to be honest with you.
He was
and then she probably picked the outfits because she picked purple too. Like not only is it bad that all your superpower is you can change the water, but now you got to wear purple too. Poor guy.
He was like form of ice cubes,
Yeah.
She's like form of a cheetah, and he's like form of a glacier.
A glass of water. A nice cool glass
he
of
was
water.
a glass of water. I remember a glass of water. And I'm thinking to myself, what in God's name is a glass of water going to do against, this monster? I don't know.
Pop probably wearing panties under that too, but I won't get into that whole story.
So now we talk pretty much all day, every day. We're always in contact with each other.
Unfortunately. And listen, she's the bane of my existence.
Whatever.
She is the cheetah to my glass of water.
Whatever. You're the glass of water to my cheetah, buddy.
Pretty much.
So when you said to me, can I call you? I knew something was wrong.
Because we don't talk on the phone.
Not usually. Usually it's just we voice message or because we're both working, we're all both doing things, and we don't have time to sit on the phone and talk for an hour and a half. So we message and stuff back and forth. So I knew when you said, can I call you? I knew something was going on, but I had no idea what. So you call me, and the next 3 days were insane. They were something that we have never dealt with before. All right, you tell, and we won't give away personal information because we don't want anybody knowing what's going on, because this is actually still going on right now. It's not done, but it's a great way to tie in, it just reminded me, a lot of the things reminded me of the Amityville idea.
Well, and I'm gonna kind of brush over a lot of it because there's so much information.
Oh.
Like we could write a book about the last 2 days of our life.
We could.
But literally it started off getting in contact with a friend of mine who said, I know this person, they're going through something. I don't know if they're really going through something or if it's a mental break and, they need other help. But to suffice it to say that from that conversation, we met someone who was going through a lot of stuff, almost I won't say a possession or anything like that, but she was dealing with something that was with her all the time.
Wait, let's preface this though by explaining about what our involvement actually you are an empath.
Mm-hmm.
I believe you to be a healer empath, and I believe that you're open. Like, more than just an empath.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of open, but not as open as this individual.
Right.
Obviously.
And
you're more of a medium. What do you call yourself, Claire Huxtable?
Well, I feel like this has been my journey in the past couple of years to try and figure out what the hell I am. But I'm starting to feel more comfortable with understanding things. And I'm a healer empath. I'm a strong empath with also, I don't want to say I'm clairvoyant. This scares me. I'm claircognizant, which means that I just know things. Like I can know something and I can be certain that I know it. And I also am clairsentient, which means that it's like empath, but times 10 it's a different kind of empath. It's not only feeling energies in a room per se, but I can feel someone's energy. I can feel the energy that surrounds someone. And I can tell whether it's male or female. I can tell whether it's negative. I know. So that's what we're working with. Now, we've never had anything like this happen to us, ever. Oh.
I had to play the Cosby Show theme.
He calls me the Claire Huxtable.
Well, because you're Claire, what are all
There's like
again?
7 of them. There's 7 of them. But I don't want to be like, they're clairsentient, claircognizant. So I know things. Like I said, I went to an investigation a couple months ago, and right off, I just knew the name of the spirit that was in the room with us. And as soon as I said her name, and I don't even know how I know these things, as soon as I said her name, all the equipment went crazy. So that's just an example. But I know things. So it's a matter for me of just learning how to harness it and how to use it and how to make it a part of my life that is manageable, because it can really make you can get very overwhelmed. Yeah, it can make you
crazy from it. Seriously.
Yes.
And that's why when we got into this situation and somebody said, is something going on or are they crazy? Well, guess what? It could be both.
Yeah.
If you're dealing with an individual who is very open, but doesn't know it and doesn't know how to control that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Guess what? You go crazy. It drives you to the point of really thinking you are, and maybe even beyond into the point where you are kind of nuts.
Well, that's why we joke about it all the time. I say, I don't want to be clairvoyant. I don't want to be clairaudient because I don't want to hear them and I don't want to see them. And so I don't allow myself to explore that because I'm not ready for that. I don't want to. It would overwhelm me, I'm sure, to the point where it would drive me crazy. I'm only able to manage what I can manage at one time, knowing what I know so far. I'm still learning. That's why I am investigating like I am. That's why I'm participating in things, because I want to learn to be able to manage it so I don't go crazy. Now imagine being this woman who is very open and really she doesn't know how to manage it at all.
No. And the thing is that she's had experiences her whole life, but because others thought she was crazy and because she thought she was crazy, she never tried to manage it. And so what happens to individuals like that, or at least in this case, is things came to her, energies came to her for whatever reason. We may have some speculation on that. And she's overwhelmed. She's at a breaking point right now. And so I got called in and brought you involved into it and really wasn't sure what we were dealing with here. We started off thinking we were dealing with one thing because of how she was describing her situation and what had happened. But I think we handled it well in that we looked at her side of the story as just one very small facet of it. Her experiences and what she thought and her assessment of it as one facet. And then we started digging a little bit. We used your ability to kind of feel out what was going on. We used my gut reaction. And we got some other people involved who did some research and investigating and all that kind of stuff. And we went from thinking it was one thing to feeling pretty sure it's something not necessarily completely different, but it is something different from what we thought.
A couple of the interesting things. The whole time I knew there was something missing. I kept saying to you over and over and over again, what is missing from this? What don't we know? There's more to the story. At first, I thought that she was holding back. But we eventually found out that as soon as we'd ask her a question, she would just gush with information.
Right. Absolutely.
She was not holding anything back. That was my first thought, was maybe she's just holding something back. She's not. But we knew there was something missing. There was a missing piece of the puzzle. And as soon as we could figure that out, we'd be able to help her. at least try to help her. And the other thing, which was really weird, was that someone like me, who can usually feel energies and tell whether something is male or female, I couldn't get a read on it. I just couldn't. And it doesn't matter whether, it's somebody in Belgium or it's somebody standing next to you. If you pick up energy, you pick up energy, and and I, for the life of me, couldn't. And it was so funny because it drained me to the point, I told you I was laughing, that I was so drained each night by the end of the day from doing this that I was sleeping better than I had in weeks because I was just so exhausted. But what really helped us was our own experiences, our gut feelings, research, common sense, and not being afraid to reach out to other people. Now, this poor woman had reached out to 2 different places for help. 2 different places. One a major player in the whole thing.
Yeah, one of them was a paranormal group and medium and all that kind of stuff. And they may still play a part in what happens in the future. And I want to state that unless you are Zach Bagans and the boys from Ghost Adventures, I'm never going to diss what you do for the most part, because everybody deals with things differently and everybody has different beliefs and things work differently for different individuals. So this podcast, I think this group went in and helped her as best they could and did a good job, but it didn't subside. And I think that taught us 2 things. Number 1, it taught us that maybe not enough had been done. And number 2, if enough had been done, we were dealing with something other than we thought. We were thinking it was the place she was living. And while that may play a small part in it because of the location of it and who may have lived there before, et cetera, we also started to realize that if we're able to help her here at this location, that she moves on, something else could be bothering her down the line, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 12 months from now. Something else will come to her and need assistance. And so that, again, helped us move in the direction of figuring out what's going on.
My only issue with the paranormal group is, and also the other avenue that she went down to try and get help.
Plain and simple, was a religious avenue.
Yeah.
Again, we have speculation there. We have gut feelings on what happened there, which I won't get into.
Right.
But they failed her in this situation.
Yes. And that's the problem is you and I, what have we done? We haven't given up. We've kept trying to help her, even though it may be something that's outside of our realm of us personally being able to finish the job for her. We are getting her the help that she needs. So in other words, she reaches out to 2 different places, and rather than saying, well, I can't do anymore, let me see who I can find for you that will help you. Well, we just can't do anymore. We're just done. How do you do that to somebody? We had this discussion yesterday. How do you just stop helping someone? The whole point of this is to help people. If you're just going to go into a place...
For us, it is.
For us. If your group is a group that just goes in and plays with instruments and, that's great. That's fine. But when somebody comes to you in obvious distress, that's not the same thing as going into a restaurant and playing with instruments. That's something different. Somebody's in distress. You need to help them. And if you can't help them, if it's beyond you, then you need to find them the right kind of help. I have a big problem with this poor woman who she sent us videos, she sent us pictures. We heard her state, she talked to you on the phone at length. We heard her state of mind. You could tell her state of mind. She's going to have a nervous breakdown if she doesn't get help. And yet, we're not giving up on her. We're trying to help her as best as we can and get her the right people. I don't understand stopping and saying, I just can't do anything more. You'll have to find somebody who can. She doesn't know who to reach out to. She didn't reach out to us. Her friend reached out to us.
Right.
You know what I mean? She doesn't know what to do.
And I think that we could do another episode on this situation because we're still in the process of resolving some of the issues for her. We haven't even really started that yet. We're just at a point where we kind of have a game plan or at least some knowledge of what may be going on. And so now the next part is figuring out what we need to do to help her. And we do know that we need to go in and we need to figure out what's really there, what may be going on. and to start doing some cleansing and hopefully teach this woman how to block.
Yes.
Or at least manage. The information that she is thrown at all the time.
I like the word manage because that's what I've learned to do. And I'm still learning to do is manage
I will say
it.
This. So we have kind of in mind what we're going to do. Again, we got other people who are much more skilled in this involved.
Right.
But one of the things, and I had to have this discussion with her just yesterday, and that was she was still sending videos and still sending more pictures and all that. And I had to say to her, I said, okay, you can stop because we believe you.
Yep.
But here's and she said, well, I just got my phone out to record to see what I picked up. And I said, well, here's the issue. Okay. If you search for something, I don't care where you search, you're going to find it. You could be at the grocery store and search, and someone like you will find something.
Right.
So if you don't want to be bothered by anything right now, the searching has to stop.
Yes.
You have to stop searching everywhere you go, because no matter where you go, someone like her with the openness and ability she has will find something anywhere.
Yep. And that's one of my concerns. Right. That's one of my concerns too, is that if she gets her immediate home cleansed and she gets it taken care of, the energy hasn't been destroyed. The energy is still going to be there. So if she goes to her friend's house or her boyfriend's house, or she's walking down the street and she, it's going to be there. It's always going to be there.
Or another energy will be there.
Right.
Again,
something will be there.
Wherever she goes, she's going to find something. So if right now she's in a situation where she needs a break from all stimuli of that nature, she needs to stop searching. And here's the other thing. So sometimes you get information. So we looked at some pictures. We're like, well, what is that? What is that? And I think internally we all go, well, I see this, I see that. What do you see? And maybe we didn't even discuss it between ourselves. But then as we got further into the investigation, we found some stuff out about what had been going on in that area, that street where she lived, possibly. And a medium that we had brought in to do some more in-depth kind of investigating on it spiritually was seeing a lot of stuff that tied into what we had initially assumed or initially stated. And then you start looking back at those pictures and going, oh my God,
yes.
That makes complete sense.
Yes.
It didn't make sense 24 hours earlier because we hadn't uncovered some of the other information.
Right.
And then, I'm getting all excited about this again.
I know, me too.
But then, like, when I finally said to this individual, we don't know for sure. We may never know 100% for sure, but here's where we're thinking, and here's what we're going to do to help you. When we finally got to that point, then she goes, well, if that's what you're thinking, you need to know this. And then she tells us something else. It's like, what?
Hence the reason why we sat there for how many days and said, there's something here that we don't know yet. There's something here we don't know. It's, and a perfect example, she sent us pictures of a reflection, okay? And she labeled it 1, 2, 3, 4. And the first time I looked at those, I kind of disregarded them because standing at the second position was what appeared to be a teenage boy. And I thought, well, you know what? It's probably her. It's probably somebody who was there because it was very well defined. And
extremely well defined.
Extremely well defined to the point where I could see I could see what it was or wasn't wearing. I mean, that's how well defined it was. So I disregarded it immediately because that wasn't what we were looking for. Fast forward a couple days, one of many aha moments, and you said, go look at that picture again and tell me what you see. And I said, I see a 16-year-old boy. Ding, ding, ding. That's where the ding, ding came from. And it all fell into place. It made sense. And I'll tell you.
Now, again, we may not have the full picture. And like you said about the Lutz thing and the DeFeo thing, nobody will ever know exactly what went on or why it went on. It's not going to happen. However, we're finally at a point where we feel like we can make a difference in the energy or whatever's there right now. And we brought in people that can help her learn to manage what she's going to have to do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to live her life. And I want to make this point because I thought it was a great analogy when I was explaining to her, because she's not thinking this way. I said, if you think of somebody who works out, eats right, their whole life is about their physique and their health. And, 4 months down the road, 5 months down the road, 12 months down the road, they're in the best shape of their life. They're ripped, they're bulging with muscles, all that kind of stuff. They've done everything they need to do to bulk up and be physically what they want to do. And they stop doing it for a month. They start reverting back to what they were. Mm-hmm. And so she's going to have to keep up the regimen of all the things that she needs to do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to help manage what she experiences. Or if she doesn't do that, if she doesn't take that advice, then we're at a point where we say, then we can't help you beyond this. You have to be the catalyst.
That's right.
To help yourself.
You have to take responsibility for yourself. That's
Yes.
one of my major lessons that I've been learning, is to have confidence in myself. To have confidence, it's very easy for me to second guess myself. I second guess myself all the time because I'm just learning how to take this made me feel depressed and crazy my entire life before I realized what was going on. I felt crazy. I felt depressed. People made me feel crazy, or I would just do it to myself. You have to get over that. And that's when I'm in an investigation, or when I was sitting here with you the past few days going through this situation, I was very confident. I knew when I'm in an investigation, I'm different because I'm in that moment, and I know what I feel and what I know. And she has to be like that. She has to learn how to gain that confidence so that she can manage what she has. When I get home from an investigation, I am beyond drained, but you know what? I feel okay because I manage it and I stop it and I'm done until the next time that it's needed. And that's what she has to learn how to do.
I'm more rejuvenated in helping and being involved with this type of stuff than I've been in a long time.
Yes.
I've spent the last year really just thinking about whether or not I wanted to pursue anything to do with paranormal, because I was so burned out on doing what I've always done. And always been a part of, I should say. So this is a good thing. And I think we will get more in depth into this at some point.
Yeah, once everything is,
stories.
I don't know if it'll ever be, quote, settled, but once we get through this, I think that we should give a little bit more specifics and we can talk a little bit more about it, because I think it's important. It's fascinating. It's important. We kept saying through the whole thing, this is like a freaking movie. It really is like a movie, but it's real life. And that's I felt so sad for this woman, and I feel scared for her because she doesn't understand that she, in a lot of ways, is part of this.
Right.
She's not just the victim. She is part of it.
Yeah, it's not happening necessarily to her. It's happening because of her.
Right. Exactly. And you're right about being rejuvenated. It's exciting for me. I told you, just as sad and as scared as I am for her, at the same time, I'm excited about this because it's taught me a few things. It's taught me to be more confident in myself, in my abilities, and what I can do. Because everything that I told you that I felt, I or thought or knew, pretty much came to fruition.
Yeah.
And that made me feel great because I need more of that. Because if I don't get more of that, then I'm just going to start second guessing myself again. I need that validation sometimes. I think anybody who's a medium needs validation at times, because unless you've grown up with it, that's a little different situation, being open from a child's perspective and just having been accepted your whole life, as opposed to people who fight it their whole lives and aren't open to it and have to do it at the age of 48, 49. But that was really great to me, to know that I could help this woman, and I truly was helping her. It wasn't just me saying, oh, well, here's what I think, and that's my imagination. This is true stuff that was going on, and it was crazy stuff. And so I just feel really good. We're not done by any means, but I think we should do an episode. I wasn't even planning on doing this episode. I was going to say, why don't we do a Twisted Towns this week? But when this all went down like it did, I thought, I think we really need to discuss this because it's important.
I think by this time next week, we might have a little bit more information just to kind of tease it, pass it along.
Yeah.
As to what because we're recording this on New Year's Day.
Yep.
Which is a Friday, and our plan is to be there on Monday to start the process of making things better for her.
Which is great. And I think that the only thing that bothers me is I wish I could be there. I want to be there so bad. You know, you're in Wisconsin. Shut up. You're in Wisconsin. I'm not. I'm in New York. So.
Oh, I'm New York.
I'm in New York. I want to be there, but I told you you're going to have to like FaceTime me or something so I can. He's not going to do that. He's not going to do that. I'll just annoy you until you do. But yeah, so maybe we can give an update next week on what's going on. But I'm very proud of us. We can end the episode with this. I'm very proud of us. We work together so incredibly well. We were like the Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys mystery.
So I was 2 to your 1. Is that what you're saying?
No, not quite. Nancy Drew doesn't need 2. Nancy only needs 1. You need 2 people to do the work of 1.
Ooh.
But I'm very proud of us because what did we decide? We weren't going to be Perry Mason. We were going to be Perry Normal. That's our group.
There you go.
Perry Normal.
I'll be Perry Mason.
I'll just be normal.
I'll be Raymond Burr, and I'll get really fat over the years, which is perfect. And you'll be Barbara Hale. What was her character's name?
I didn't watch that.
Oh my God, what a great show. You got to check it out.
I didn't watch that. My mother liked Beretta. We used to watch Beretta.
Wow, that says a lot right there.
I know.
I remember like just a little bit about Beretta, and then when Chevy came out with the Beretta car, I'm like, why would you name your car after a really poor 70s investigator show? At least call it Kojak.
Well, I was just going to say Kojak. We used to watch Kojak too. Next week, I have no idea what we're talking about next week, but we will give an update on the case we're working on. That's for sure.
Okay, why don't we do a Twisted Towns?
Let's do a Twisted Towns.
You got one you want to do?
Yeah, let's actually do the Twisted Towns. We're going to talk about my hometown, Utica, New York.
Okay, sounds good.
We'll talk about all of the mafia and that I am actually related to a mafia member. Mm-hmm.
So basically, what we learned with the DeFeos is if you have mafia in the family, I feel bad for your husband because he's going to get murdered.
Probably. My mother ended up telling me some stories too. So we'll go through Twisted Towns next week. That should be a great episode too. It's very interesting. So that is the Sandy and Todd cast, episode 2. We rambled a lot, but we got a lot done, and it was very interesting. If anybody has any opinions on this will be going up.
We don't care what you think.
We don't care what you think.
All that matters is what we think.
These episodes will continue to be up on YouTube each and every week, and also we're eventually going to end up on Spotify, Apple, the whole 9 yards, so you can hear us anywhere, and we'll keep you posted on where we'll be. Happy New Year, everybody. We'll talk to you next week.
How many more miles left in this race? How long it takes, I don't know.